The day my well went dry, I knew it wasn't an accident, and I knew exactly who caused it. Out where I live, water isn't some utility bill you barely think about. It's everything. It keeps the cattle alive, keeps the troughs filled, keeps the dust down when summer bakes the hills so hard the ground cracks open like old pottery. You lose water out here, you don't just get inconvenienced. You start counting how long before real damage sets in. My name's Wade Mercer, and I've lived on the same stretch of land outside Red Canyon, New Mexico for almost 30 years. 17.5 rocky acres, tucked against the slope, nothing fancy. Juniper trees, rust-colored stone, enough grazing land to run cattle if you know what you're doing and don't mind working harder than anybody in town thinks is reasonable. And under all of it was my spring. That well had been drilled back in 1993. My dad helped set the casing himself. I still remember him standing there in an old denim jacket, chewing sunflower seeds and telling me, "Take care of the water, and the land will take care of you." For 30 years, he was right. Droughts came and went. Neighbors hauled water in tanks. A few properties nearby sold off because they couldn't keep up. Mine kept pumping. Steady. Reliable. Almost boring. Then Ethan and Claire Whitaker bought the ridge above me. At first I didn't think much of it. The place had been empty for years, and honestly, I figured somebody with enough money to build up there was probably looking for sunsets and bragging rights. Turns out, I wasn't wrong. A week after closing, trucks started rolling in. Survey crews, excavators, concrete forms. And then one afternoon, I saw Ethan standing at the property corner with a drilling contractor. Tall guy, pressed shirt, spotless boots that had clearly never met actual dirt. He waved and walked down toward my fence, smiling like we'd been neighbors forever. "Wade, right? That's me." He stuck out a hand. "Ethan Whitaker. Hope we're not causing too much noise." I shook his hand. He looked past me toward the pasture. "Beautiful setup. Thanks. How deep's your well?" He asked it casually, like he was asking what kind of grass I planted. I shrugged. "Just under 300 feet. And reliable?" "Been reliable longer than most marriages." He laughed a little too hard. Claire stood back near the truck with a clipboard and sunglasses on, not saying a word. Ethan nodded. "Good to know. That should have bothered me more than it did. But when somebody smiles and acts neighborly, you tend to give them the benefit of the doubt." 5 weeks later, I turned on the pump and heard air. That dry metallic sputter hit my chest like a punch. I checked the pressure tank. Nothing. Reset the pump. Nothing. By noon it had kicked off 3 times. By 1 o'clock the cattle troughs were half empty. I called Hank Delaney. Hank's been servicing wells around Red Canyon longer than I've owned my truck. Gray beard, old ball cap. Drives a beat-up service rig that somehow refuses to die. He pulled up around 3. Didn't say much. Just ran his tests, dropped the line, checked pressure. Then he leaned back and stared into the well casing. "Wade." That tone alone made my stomach drop. "What?" "Your water table's fallen close to 60 feet. I stared at him. "That's not natural." "Nope." He wiped his hands. "Somebody uphill drilled deeper, and they're pulling hard." I didn't even answer. I got in the truck and headed straight up the ridge. And there it was. Massive drill rig. Brand new. Towering over the Whitaker's property like an oil operation. Industrial pumps running nonstop. Temporary cistern tanks lined up beside the foundation. Water pouring. Thousands of gallons. I could actually hear it from the road. That steady mechanical rush. And right there next to the rig stood Ethan with a clipboard, talking to contractors. I slammed the truck door harder than I meant to. He turned, smiled, then saw my face. Smile disappeared. "You drilled a deep well." He folded his arms. "We did. You drained mine." That's a hell of an accusation. Hank measured it. He glanced toward the rig, then back at me. "Our hydro consultant approved everything. You're pumping construction tanks nonstop. We have permits." I stepped closer. "Your permits don't outrank my water rights." That got his attention. Not panic. Not guilt. Annoyance. Like I'd just made his afternoon inconvenient. Claire walked over then, heels crunching over gravel. "Is there a problem?" I looked at both of them. "My well's dry." Claire crossed her arms. "That isn't our responsibility. Your drill went in 500 feet, and suddenly my spring collapses." Ethan's jaw tightened. "We spent a lot of money doing this correctly. So did I, 30 years ago." He gave me a cold smile. "If your system can't keep up anymore, maybe you need an upgrade." That right there. That did it. Not because he was wrong. Because of how easy he said it. like my land was just some outdated inconvenience sitting downhill from his view. I pointed toward the pump. You need to reduce flow. No, then drill elsewhere. No, you're violating senior access. He stepped right into my space. We've got legal clearance, Wade. If you think otherwise, call the state. Then he turned his back on me. Just like that. Dismissed. Like the conversation was over because he decided it was. I drove home with both hands locked on the steering wheel, so tight my fingers hurt. The trough was nearly empty when I got back. One of my cows was standing beside it, staring down like she expected water to magically appear. That image stayed with me. And around sunset, sitting at my kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee and 30 years of paperwork spread out in front of me, I called Laura Bennett, best property attorney in the county, sharp enough to skin a rattlesnake and somehow smile while doing it. She answered on the second ring. Wade, I need help. What happened? I looked out the window toward the dry pump house, then back at the old water rights certificate in my hand, and I said the sentence that started the whole war. The people uphill drilled a well, and I think they just killed mine. Laura was at my place the next morning before 9. That's one thing about small towns. When somebody good at their job says they'll show up, they actually show up. She came through the gate carrying a leather folder and a travel mug, dark hair tied back, boots dusty from the gravel drive. Laura always looked calm, but there was a sharpness to her, like every detail she noticed immediately got filed away somewhere useful. She walked straight to the pump house first, asked questions, looked over Hank's measurements, checked the casing depth. Then she sat at my picnic table under the cottonwood and spread out every document I had. Original land deed, well registration, water use certificate, a renewal filing from years back. And finally she found what she was looking for. Her finger tapped the paper once. There. I leaned in. She looked up. Your access rights were established in 1993 and recorded against this aquifer before that ridge parcel was subdivided. So, theirs comes second. I sat back. They can't overdraw if it interferes with your established use. I let out a slow breath. And if they already did? Laura gave me the faintest smile. Then they either reduce pumping, or they start paying. Now that sounded like English. She drafted a demand letter that afternoon. Professional, but sharp. Cited the priority rights. Demanded immediate reduction. Required funding to restore my original water flow. Gave them 30 days. And for about half a day, I actually thought maybe Ethan would do the smart thing. Maybe he'd talk to his consultant. Maybe Claire would realize this wasn't worth escalating. Maybe they'd back off and we'd all move on. Then the response arrived. Overnight courier. Fancy Scottsdale law firm. Heavy paper. Expensive logo. The kind of envelope designed to intimidate. Laura read it standing at my kitchen counter. Then snorted. What? They're claiming no proven connection. Of course they are. They also say your well issue may be age-related. I actually laughed. Age-related? Apparently 30 years of stable output suddenly became coincidence. She flipped the last page. Then raised one eyebrow. They offered $5,000. I stared at her. Five. For what? For your inconvenience. I took the letter. Read it. Then read it again. And something about the wording got under my skin worse than Ethan had. Because it wasn't written like neighbors solving a problem. It was written like rich people trying to buy silence. Like the number was supposed to make me grateful. Like my spring had a price tag. Laura watched my face. You want me to respond? No, you sure? I folded the paper. Let's take it to the state. 3 months later we were sitting in a hearing room in Santa Fe. Nothing glamorous. Fluorescent lights. Plastic chairs. A long table. The kind of room built for paperwork and bad coffee. Ethan and Claire were already there with their attorney. He was polished. Expensive suit. Perfect smile. The kind of man who probably billed by the breath. Ethan gave me a nod. Claire didn't even look my direction. The hearing officer was a man named Victor Ramirez. Late 60s. Calm. No wasted words. He listened to both sides for hours. Hydrology reports. Permit records. Water table measurements. Construction usage logs. Hank testified. Clear and direct. Laura walked through every legal filing. Then Ethan's consultant tried explaining why their pumping supposedly had no measurable impact. Victor listened. Asked a few questions. Took notes. Then near the end, he looked directly at Ethan. Your drilling began approximately 5 weeks before the plaintiff's well pressure dropped. Yes. And you increased pumping volume during construction? Yes. And you were aware the lower parcel held senior access? Ethan hesitated. Then, yes. Victor nodded once. Quiet. Then he delivered the ruling. Clear as daylight. The senior rights holder retains priority access. Respondents are ordered to reduce pumping by 60% immediately and fund restoration sufficient to return plaintiff's prior capacity. Failure to comply within 30 days will result in penalties of $1,000 per day. That should have been the end. Legally, it was. Reality's different. Because Ethan walked out of that building furious. And instead of complying, he doubled down. For 30 straight days those pumps kept running. Morning, night, didn't matter. I could hear them from my pasture. A mechanical hum drifting downhill. Every day my cattle water stayed tight. Every day Hank checked levels. Every day Ethan ignored the order. Laura called. Sent notices. Filed violations. Nothing. Day 23 I drove by and saw crews filling pool framing. Day 27 landscaping trucks. Day 30 Claire stood outside giving instructions while water sprayed across a half-finished lawn. Like the state order was a parking ticket. That night Laura came by. Set fresh paperwork on my kitchen table. He's going to keep stalling. What happens next? You can wait for penalties. I looked out toward the dark pasture. And she hesitated. Then, or you exercise your senior rights. I looked back. What exactly does that mean? It means if restoring your original access requires drilling deeper into the same formation, and you're legally allowed. I understood immediately. Didn't say anything. Laura just watched me. Wade, if you do this, do it clean. Everything permitted. Everything documented. I nodded. The next morning I called Hank. He pulled up before sunrise. Coffee thermos in one hand. Blueprint tube in the other. I showed him the northwest edge of my land. Rockier than the rest. A little elevation. Closest point to the same underground formation feeding Ethan's new system. He studied the ground. Ran measurements. Looked uphill. Then back at me. You really want to do this? Can we? Yep. How deep? Probably 650. How much? 35 grand. I whistled. He shrugged. Water ain't cheap. No, it legal? Laura says yes. He stared uphill a long moment. Then a grin crept across his face. Well, let's get to work. For the next several days Hank's crew drilled. Steel casing. Dust. Rock fragments flying. Engines rattling through the canyon. The whole ridge could hear it. And Ethan definitely heard it. On day 3 his truck rolled down. He stopped at the fence. Got out. Hands on hips. What exactly are you doing? I wiped dust off my gloves. Improving my water access. He stared at the drill. Then back at me. That's aimed straight into the same formation. Yep. You're interfering. I almost smiled. I have permits. His jaw tightened. This is retaliation. No, this is deliberate. No, Ethan, this is restoration. He stepped closer. You're costing me thousands. I looked him dead in the eye. You should have reduced flow 30 days ago. He stood there breathing hard. Then Claire climbed out of the passenger side. Sunglasses on. Voice cold. This is harassment. I pointed toward Laura's paperwork clipped to the rig. State approved. Claire glanced. Read enough. Said nothing. They got back in the truck and drove off. Hank leaned toward me. That felt good. A little. On day 8 we hit clean pressure. Hard pressure. Strong. Better than I'd had in weeks. The line filled fast. Storage tanks rose. Troughs topped off. My spring stabilized. And 2 weeks later, Ethan's pressure started dropping. At first I only heard rumors. A subcontractor mentioned the Whitakers had weak flow to the upper tanks. Then another guy in town said construction paused for half a day. Then Hank got a call from someone on Ethan's crew asking technical questions. Hank hung up, grinning like Christmas morning. Pressure's down by half. I just nodded. Didn't say a word. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't sleep real well that night. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't the one staring at a dry system. They were. 3 days later, Ethan showed up at my gate looking like a man who hadn't slept. No pressed shirt this time. No polished smile. No easy confidence. Just dusty jeans, a wrinkled button-down, and a face red enough I could see it from the barn. I was replacing a fence post when his truck came tearing up the drive. Didn't even slow down. He slammed the brakes, jumped out, and marched straight toward me. You've got a lot of nerve. I kept hammering. Thunk. Thunk. Didn't even look up. He got closer. Our pressure dropped again last night. Thunk. Upper tanks barely filling. Thunk. I've got crews sitting around waiting because of you. That got my attention. I leaned on the post driver and looked at him. Because of me? His jaw flexed. You knew exactly what drilling there would do. I gave him a long look. You mean the exact same thing you knew your drilling would do to me? For a second, he didn't answer. Then Claire stepped out of the truck. Perfect hair. Big sunglasses. Even angry, she somehow looked expensive. She came around beside him. This has gone too far. I nodded. I said that a few months ago. Her voice sharpened. We're prepared to sue. I almost laughed. For what? Intentional interference. Using my own legal water rights. Ethan pulled folded papers from under his arm and shoved them toward me. Threat letters. Legal language. Demand to stop extraction. I didn't even take them. Just pointed toward the porch. Laura's inside. That landed. Both of them looked up. Laura stepped out onto the deck with a mug of coffee in one hand, like she'd been waiting for exactly this. Which, honestly, she had. She walked down the steps calm as ever. Ethan started talking immediately. This was malicious. This was retaliatory. This was causing financial harm. Laura let him finish. Then she held up one finger. Your clients ignored a lawful order for 23 days. Silence. Your clients continued pumping above permitted volume. Silence. Your clients accumulated penalties. Claire folded her arms. This is harassment. Laura smiled. No. Harassment was draining his established water source and pretending it was coincidence. Ethan's voice dropped. What do you want? Laura answered before I could. Compliance. He looked uphill toward his property, toward the stalled trucks, the half-finished pool, the landscaping crews standing around. Then back at us. His shoulders dropped. Just a little. Enough to notice. That afternoon, engineers arrived at Ethan's place. Then another crew. Then another. Flow restrictors. Pressure controls. Storage redesign. Tank adjustments. For almost a week, the ridge sounded like non-stop construction. Metal clanging. Equipment backing up. Generators running. And every evening I'd walk the fence line and hear one thing I hadn't heard in months. My own water. Strong. Steady. Like it had never left. A week later, Laura called. Got final numbers. I sat on the tailgate with a notebook. Hit me. 28,000 in system modifications. I whistled. 35 reimbursed for your secondary well. Good. Full legal fees. Even better. She paused. And 23,000 in penalties. That made me laugh out loud. Not proud of it. But I did. Because Ethan had spent months acting like none of this applied to him. Like paperwork was optional if you had enough money. Turns out the state disagreed. Construction slowed after that. Then stopped for almost 2 weeks. The pool sat unfinished. The guest house framing stayed exposed. The fancy landscaping browned in the sun because suddenly they weren't wasting water anymore. One afternoon, Hank stopped by and leaned on my fence. Watched the ridge. Then grinned. Funny how conservation suddenly matters. I laughed. Real funny. He looked toward my troughs. All good. Best they've been in months. He nodded. Then drove off. And for the first time in a long time, everything felt settled. Quiet. The kind of quiet land's supposed to have. Wind through the brush. Cattle moving slow. Water cycling clean through the tanks. No engines. No arguing. No lawyers. I honestly thought that was the ending. Thought Ethan had finally learned. Thought Claire had moved on. Thought we'd all go back to pretending we didn't exist. Then one Friday evening, just before sunset, I saw headlights. Not Ethan. Not Claire. County trucks. 3 of them. Pulling onto my lower road. I walked out to meet them. A man stepped down holding a clipboard. Older guy. In uniform. Professional. Mr. Mercer? Yeah. We received a complaint. My stomach tightened. About what? He glanced at the paper. Unauthorized runoff diversion near your western drainage line. I stared. Because I knew exactly what that meant. And exactly who filed it. That drainage line had been there for years. Natural runoff from monsoon season. Never once an issue. Until now. The county inspector looked apologetic. Probably nothing, but we have to verify. I nodded. Sure. He and the crew headed toward the drainage edge. And as they walked, I looked uphill, right toward the Whitaker's place. And there they were, standing near the ridge fence. Watching. Claire had her arms folded. Ethan beside her. And even from that distance, I could see the look on his face. Not angry. Not frustrated. Satisfied. Like he'd finally found another angle. Another way in. And standing there in the fading red light, with county inspectors walking my land and Ethan staring down from the ridge like the whole thing was some game he still planned on winning. I realized the water fight hadn't ended. It had just changed shape. So now I want to ask you, who was actually right here? Did Ethan get exactly what he deserved after draining my well and ignoring the order? Or did drilling into that same aquifer make me just as ruthless as he was? And more importantly, what do you think they were planning next? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me whose side you're on, and if you've ever dealt with a neighbor dispute that got way more personal than it should have. I want to hear that too. And trust me, after what happened with those county inspectors, things got even uglier.